Hello, Exiles. Real quick video here because we have our first information about our upcoming Path of Exile 1 mini league. I don't really know exactly what to call it. We know its name, though. The Legacy of Phrecia event. Very, very apropos. His name is Cesaro Phrecia, all right? Who have we been throwing at them as the meme for this whole thing leading up to the whole, when are we going to hear about 3.26? We threw pictures of Cesaro. I don't know if you saw it. They were doubling it over and over again on Reddit. Believe it or not, this was day 13. I don't know how many Azaros that is, but it's, 2 to the 13th power. So a lot of Azaros by the time that whole thing kind of ended. And they're really delivering. I have to say. I'm very excited to see what these new ones are because they've given us very obvious themes. Oshabi, Arakali, Disciple of the Trial Master. Very nice. Probably most exciting currently is Harbinger. I'll get to that in a moment. I've already found an incredibly good, nice defensive interaction in this tree that's been spoiled. We have the Gambler. There's some things in Gambler that I like, but currently Gambler kind of comes off as hot garbage. Maybe I'm just not seeing what you can do with this stuff, but it looks like the downsides are a little too heavily weighted to be as good as we would hope. And then they spoiled this, which appears to be a sort of dedicated mini stash tab attached to your map device. So you can keep some currency in there, you can throw your maps in there, you can throw fragments in there, whatever you're running, you can throw it in there in bulk and just keep going even more quickly, which fantastic quality of life edition. I'm guessing standard is going to get this right away, assuming it's not specific to the event, which I don't see why it would be, but this looks awesome. This is fantastic, 10 out of 10 stuff. Very, very exciting. Honestly, if they showed this now, I would almost be like, man, I should just start playing. The thought of getting to maps and having something to streamline the hideout process is on its own kind of almost enough. That's just yeah, keeps the dopamine going, and that is what Path of Exile is. So we're gonna start with the Gambler. Stick around or skip ahead if you want to. What I've got for the Harbinger is very spicy. If it hasn't been talked about elsewhere, I think you're gonna want to hear this. There's a lot in here that's nearly good. There's a couple things that are just kind of outright bad. Heads and tails are one of them. Inherently, these effects are not bad, don't get me wrong. But for 2 ascendancy points, I would never take these. I would never in a bajillion years take these. Unless the lead up line is something absurd, and I don't understand what the minor nodes are doing. Making one type of block lucky and then having the other stay normal would have been much better. Honestly, 110,000%. I would much rather do that than, having one be unlucky. That just sounds bad. It's effectively a massive nerf. Why would I not just use Svalin, which gives all of your block lucky at the cost of 10% maximum block? That's much better than either of these, and it saves me 2 ascendancy points. And you could say opportunity cost of a shield, but honestly, opportunity cost of 2 ascendancy points is much larger to me. And the rest of the nodes, little different story. Overly Confident is quite nice. It's not hard to get this going. You could run Petrified Blood, and you would just kind of have a sizable damage reduction going forward because every attack in the game has a damage range. Having it always be lower is generally going to be very good. It's not going to save you from big hits, though, which is a theme going with the Gambler. Risk Aversion is the only node on here that you can get to immediately that has no downsides. So I kind of like it for that. The effect is also strong. 50% chance to avoid elemental ailments and 50% chance to avoid being stunned. It's really easy to get the other 50% chance to make those both 100. Stun immunity and elemental ailment immunity is really good. It is. And all of those stats are near the duelist. You kind of have to go over to the ranger area a bit, but it's all there. It's easy to get. Growing Accumulator is a flat out damage buff. This is a good node. I probably should have given this a little more credit because it doesn't technically have a negative. It doesn't work with damage over time, but obviously you don't want to build around that. And then Spectacular Parlay, I think is really interesting. This is going to call into question how a certain mechanic will work, specifically if you have damage with hits is unlucky, and then you have lightning damage from hits is lucky, or rather, non-critical? Will these cancel out? So if I can get a damage from hits is lucky from somewhere, can I cancel out the downside of this and just have lucky crit? Because that's pretty good. Otherwise, getting a hit with a very low damage variance is probably not that difficult. So I think overall Spectacular Parlay is very good if you build around it. And again, this isn't really where the problem is. The biggest problem node I actually have right here is risky exploit. And the reason why I consider this a problem node is actually because reversed odds is so good. And it's like you kind of take this, and I don't know how to maximize the use of this. It really just feels like all downside in a macro scale, because minus 25% to all elemental resistances, that sucks. That's a bit of a bitter pill to swallow. And then its effect kind of wants to push you into not taking max res bonuses, because that will comparatively make this more valuable, right? The procs will be much more significant. You should look to fix your damage in your incoming damage with other ways. And to be fair, if you got enough endurance charges, you probably could do a little something with this. And this does, and because you're not stacking your max res, you don't need as much resistance overall, which is kind of a okay. You know, I'm kind of seeing something there, but at the same time, if you're trying to build a character that can survive big hits, and this doesn't roll on the big hit, then it might as well not be there. And endurance charges with 75% res might not cover that, which kind of makes it like this is good for mapping survivability, and for the big attacks that are a lot of small hits, like Veritania's little tornadoes are a good example where this is probably going to feel really good, really strong. But outside of that, this has downsides. It's not that strong. However, reversed odds is one of the strongest nodes I think I've ever seen. That probably sounds absurd, but let's be real for a moment. Most enemies have, I believe, 40% resistance. I'm gonna find that. Sorry, when I said most enemies, I was gonna go look at pinnacles specifically. Actually, pinnacles have 50 resistance for elemental, that's kind of insane. That means that half the time it's gonna become negative 50 to your attack or spell. Think about that for a moment, because the way this is worded does not negate the effect of penetration or effects that would, it doesn't negate the effect of penetration. Effects that would reduce their resistances, you lose value here. But penetration, you basically double dip. So you take their 50%, you turn it to negative 50%, and then your, 40% cold penetration is now negative 90 cold res for the Shaper. That's awesome. That's an amazing, fantastic node. This is going to feel good kind of everywhere, as long as you're playing elemental damage. This is like, if you wanted to do elemental damage on a duelist for whatever reason, this might be your situation to do it, because there's enough here. There's enough here to have a good character. And reversed odds is very interesting. Spectacular parlay is very interesting. You could actually make a pretty cool low life spellcaster, I think, with overly confident and some other things if you really wanted to. There's a lot of options here. This isn't a bad ascendancy, but some of the nodes don't really do enough in a concrete way for me to really feel confident and recommend them. That's not at all like Harbinger. Holy shit. This is honestly one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I mean, immediately should jump out to you is, well, you can't read the title because I don't speak Harbinger or read it. Sorry. 100% increased air effective hex skills. This is already very good. If you don't understand why, it's because hex skills with Blasphemy are cast as an aura, and the big issue those always have is their area sucks. This is a big step towards fixing that. Getting temporal chains for free kind of makes this, in my opinion, like already kind of showing why Gambler isn't the greatest. And I hate to say that, but that is the way it is. Gambler just doesn't have a node that kind of hits me this way, except for maybe some of the better ones that are hidden behind another node. We have some channeling buffs as well. I love channeling. I wish channeling were better. I don't think this is good enough. I get why they put channeling nodes in here, because one of the core Harbinger uniques gives channeling, gives damage to channeling. But this just it's really not enough. Unaffected by chill and shock, like, it's not bad. This kind of helps you man up. Same with the curses and stuff. But I guess if you were playing Cyclone, I could see this being really good, right? If you were just always channeling, or Charge Dash for that matter. But this is this is one of those ones where it's like, it's conditional and you have control over it, but it's really easy for this to fail you, and I don't think anyone's gonna like go out of their way to take this. There's better stuff. That's the big issue. There's better stuff. Now, the other nodes all end in a summon greater Harbinger skill. And when I made my video talking about how they had initially teased Harbinger, I said these might show up, and lo and behold, they did. The greater versions are here. Greater Harbinger of Time, if you remember correctly, is 10% action speed with a 8-second duration and a 10-second cooldown. So 80% uptime. But that's very easy to keep going because down here, kind of disjointed from it, is a Ascendancy notable that not only makes debuffs expire more quickly, but it makes buffs expire slowly. And this alone with Harbinger of Time gives you 100% uptime, which is fantastic. Greater Harbinger of the Arcane with this is like 85% uptime or something like that. I didn't do the exact math. I just kind of ballparked it, but this will give you Arcane Surge. It will also give you, I believe it's Shock Chance and Lightning Pen, which, okay, that's not bad, right? There's definitely situations where getting Arcane Surge isn't the easiest, and I don't know what the value of the Arcane Surge from this is, but if it's a good one, which Greater Harbinger of the Arcane kind of implies it would be, this will be quite nice. This will be valuable on certain builds. I want to say cast on critical strike builds. Oh no, that's not like that anymore because you actually pay the cost, so you can just hook that up. But you might find that you have better socket options and this frees that up. So that alone on its is kind of rather nice. On the way to Harbinger of the Arcane, 30% increased energy shield recovery rate and then mana recovery rate. These are huge. This is straight up activates your Archmage neurons because mana recovery rate is not mana regeneration rate. This is multiplicative. So if you have 300% increased mana regeneration rate, this turns it into 330%. Or I'm sorry, 390%. That's the worst napkin math I've ever done in my life. Outside of that, 40% increased cooldown recovery rate on the way to Harbinger of Time. That's a very strong node, right? Cast on Critical Strike pops out. There's almost a thing here that makes me look at all this and I'm like, Cyclone cast on crit. would probably work. You get the immunity to everything while channeling, this is where it would be strongest. You get increased cooldown recovery rate, you get the mana recovery rate, and then you kind of have dealer's choice pick on what you go for elsewhere, but I mean, Harbinger of the Arcane's an obvious okay choice. But the thing I really want to talk about, the thing where I said I kind of have an interaction you might want to know about, is Harbinger of Focus. Harbinger of Focus is kind of insane. Let me show you. Here we have the wiki page for Summon Greater Harbinger of Focus. This is found on the shield, which is, funny enough, the one that gives you the channeling benefits. You don't need to be channeling for this anymore, which is very nice. Last 4 seconds, cooldown of 8 seconds. With the node preceding it, which you are guaranteed to get, this is now 5.2 seconds. 5.2 seconds of every 8 with ailment immunity, stun immunity, 20% damage reduction, and immunity to curses is good. It's not quite enough uptime for you to feel really confident in it, but that is objectively good. The question becomes, how do we make this better? As far as I can tell, there really is nothing in the game that you can get on the skill tree or from a unique item that will increase the duration for skill effects of your minions. I don't believe minion duration affects this either. I'm pretty sure that is just the duration of a temporary minion and how long it lasts, which would have been very nice if that worked, because that would make this very easy, but I'm pretty sure that's not how it works. So we have to find another way to make this work. However, that does exist. And actually, wait, am I seeing this right? We're doing it live. The tooltip here says cooldown 6 seconds. It's supposed to be 8. I'm going to check this on PoeDB. Oh my god, it is 6 seconds on PoeDB. Okay, so it baseline 5.2 of every 6 seconds. The good news is it is very easy to get this up high enough to cover all 6 seconds. Why? Because Malevolence exists. Malevolence gives you and nearby allies 19, we'll say 20%, because you're probably going to get it to level 21. 20% increased skill duration. 20% of, what is it, 4 is 0.8 seconds, I believe? Yes, 0.8 seconds times 1.3, which is 5.6. We're well over 6. That's all it takes. All it takes is Malevolence and the nodes leading up to it, and you have 100% uptime on probably the best defensive buff in the entire game. By a lot. Unless it turns out for some reason the auras don't affect the Harbingers, which I don't understand why they wouldn't. The only thing I've ever understood about them is that they don't take damage. I believe you can affect them otherwise, especially if they're yours. I should look that up. I cannot for the life of me find if this will actually work. As far as I can tell, it should work. There's nothing to imply that your summoned harbingers will not be affected by your auras because they are a living entity and a minion that is active under your control. So if it doesn't work that way, that's one of those weird things about Path of Exile. No one has ever reported it as not working, so I assume that it does. And just, yeah, you don't need a lot of investment to get that uptime up to 100%. And literally, I mean, it's like fortify with everything else attached to it. This is so good. This blows Gambler out of the water, man. It's completely unfair. And even if the thing doesn't work, 5.2 baseline out of every 6 seconds is like just absolutely disgustingly insane uptime. It's so good. Harbinger is going to be 10 out of 10 playable no matter what, just by this alone, unless they nerf it, which, sorry if I'm the one who made that happen. Not really, actually. That's they just shouldn't nerf it, all right? They made that decision, not me. This is great. This is fantastic. Everything else here, you can make a build out of it that'll do good damage. I have zero doubts about that. These buffs are all very strong. In fact, as I was reading and searching for information on Harbingers, Greater Harbinger of Time in some places was reported as a 20% action speed buff, which would be absurdly good. I would just stick to the right side in that case. Who cares about temp chains? If I'm faster, I don't care if they're slower. Man, Harbinger is going to be very good. And do not sleep on this. I think this might actually be possibly the strongest defensive buff out there. Like, if you think getting Perma Fortify on Champion is good, this is that on steroids. And you can also get Fortify on top of it. Anyway, be excited. Have a good one, Exiles.